This is going to be a short one, but it's a good one. It's important. We're going to talk about architects' scope of work related to what's in their contract. Now, whether you're going to read that contract or not, there are a few things you need to pay attention to when signing up an architect. There are actually 4 things you need to look for. There is their base scope, ad services, consultants, and reimbursement. Look at those sections. Make sure that what you need is covered in those sections. And by covered means that's what they're going to be providing you as part of their services. Now, there's a difference between base scope and ad services. Ad services are exactly like that. It's a change order. It basically means here's a number, but it's not what we're going to provide you until you approve it. Base scope is what they're obligated to provide you as part of their scope of services, right? So when you're hiring an architect, as part of their base scope, and by the way, we're talking about tenant improvement, and I am in Los Angeles, but this applies to any TI in the US. TI or tenant improvement, it's the same thing. So when you're hiring an architect, at a minimum, you need to make sure that they take you through the process, right? From programming, space plan, test fit, design, construction documents, definitely include plan check, bidding, construction administration, right? Closeout. Those have to be included. Now, a lot of architects don't include furniture or technology in their scope. I think for TI, furniture has to be included in the architect scope of work. That's something that I always move from below the line, meaning as an ad service, to the base scope, because without furniture, you can't operate. And if you don't have an architect who knows how to handle furniture, don't hire them. They're not the right architect for TI. The other component is the coordination. There are a lot of other trades. Listen to my previous video on the players. There are a lot of other consultants involved, right, during the design process, from MEP engineers, structural engineers, acoustical, lighting, etc. Ideally, you want the architect to hold those contracts. They're not contracted with you. If you're a tenant, if they're under the architect, that means that you hire the architect, but the architect holds the contract for all those other consultants. Now, typically an architect charges a markup when they do that. You can negotiate what that markup is, right? But some architects I've seen, not only they charge a markup, but they also have a coordination fee, which I think is BS. I think if you are charging the client a markup, that should account for that coordination. You're an architect. You're responsible for coordinating. So if you have to, charge more for coordination, then I would think twice about hiring that architect as well. Anyways, that's my opinion. I come from that world, and we like to take ownership of everything we did when I was on the architectural side. And I think architects nowadays are less and less taking ownership, which is sad because you lose control, and that's when things become a mess. That's when the coordination issues actually happen, and I'm going to do a video on that one shortly. So furniture, technology, they're going to bring a technology consultant under them, but that should be included. And the other component that really you need to look at is meetings. Do they include meetings throughout, or do they limit it to a certain number of meetings per phase? It's important that architects attend weekly. They're going to want to charge more for that, but reality is it's better for everybody that they are there because they're the keeper of the drawings. Now, ad services gets a little bit tricky. So we talked about base scope, right? And what should be included. Ad services could be anything beyond the standard tenant improvement, right? Like designing the elevator lobby, designing restrooms, interconnecting stair, branding, right? Providing multiple sets of drawings. This is important. If you have a phased project, right? Sometimes you want to break it up into multiple sets, or sometimes you have multiple floors and you want to submit those separately to the city. So sometimes architects charge more for that, which makes sense because it's time, right? For them to prepare these sets. But it's not like they're recreating everything from scratch. It's just the floor plans and the associated drawings that they're adding to the title block. So they shouldn't be charging you a lot for that. And then there's more. So those are under ad services. Now, just remember what those numbers are. Try to get a fee for those, because if you need them, at least you have it locked in and you understand where you stand in the budget. Then the other component is the consultants, right? Are they taking it under them or are they not? I recommend the architect taking them under them, because there's a whole bunch of liability, responsibility coordination that happens. And if you, as a client, directly contract with the consultants, it could become a disaster. You're not an expert in that. This is not your job. So why would you take on the ownership of coordinating all these things that has to happen between these consultants? So take a look at that section. Make sure that the consultant coordination or the consultant part, how it's handled. The markup is negotiable. I'm not going to use any percentages, but architects have, there's a typical percent they charge. You can negotiate it. So have a conversation with the architect. And then the last component is the reimbursement. Reimbursement is an allowance, right? It's for their parking costs. It's for their mileage. It's for printing and productions. Now, pay attention to that. On one of my projects, this was ridiculous. A very big architect put in language that they were going to reimburse meals, which to me was ridiculous. It's like, what? I'm going to pay for your lunch while you're basically doing your scope of work, right? So pay attention to those languages. Definitely, mark them up. Make sure that both parties or entities agree to what their deliverables are. Also, make sure that the deliverables have a time attached to it, right? Like, you can't expect schematic design and design development to take forever. So make sure they identify, okay, from start to finish of this phase, it's X amount of weeks, whether it's 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Make sure for each of those components in their contract or proposal, right, they include the duration of each of those phases. That's it. I think I covered the basics of what you need to look for when you're hiring an architect. So stay tuned. More to come.